Hi, Kayla, and welcome to Speak Life. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. Well, obviously, you are our client at K&Co Media, and I'm your manager. So I know about you, but I'm really excited today for you to share a little bit more about you and your story so that other people can understand more who you are. I've had the privilege of getting to know you, and you're more than just a beautiful face. You're a woman that has purpose and heart and an amazing mom and just giving back in the community. And so it's an honor for me to represent you and to have our company behind you. So today I just wanted to kind of go into a little bit more about you. But first off, will you tell everybody what you do and what are your titles?
Yes, of course. And thank you so much for that. I mean, I don't think there's anything easier than being interviewed by my own manager. So this is great. I feel good. But thank you again.
Yes.
So first and foremost, I am a mother. I'm also a luxury real estate agent for the Oppenheim Group in Corona Del Mar. I'm also a speaker. I talk about my story, and I'm a coach.
So Kayla, some of your coaching, what are some of the things that you help people with? Tell us some of those services.
Yeah, so I think the best term really is I'm a transformational coach. I basically help people through personal development, going through their mental illnesses, overcoming adversities, and relationships.
Wow, I love that. Where do we sign up? We all need this.
And I think it's super important too, especially when you're in business as well, because that all ties in at the end of the day. So transformational is definitely the best term.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you've been really moving forward with your speaking, which is awesome. So I know you're starting to speak on bigger stages, and you are open as a keynote speaker, which is great. So I think that people are going to love to hear your story today, and we're gonna dive into that soon. But before we do that, you mentioned you're a luxury real estate agent. So how did you come into this? Like, a lot of people struggle to find their purpose and what they're going to do and a job. Tell us about that process. How did you come to want to become an agent?
Well, I sure did not wake up and said, I'm going to be a real estate agent. Or I don't think any of us are really born to think that that's what we want to do, unless, of course, you're born into a family that is in real estate and that's what you've known your whole life. But my first career was 10 years of being in the beauty industry. So I started off as a cosmetologist. I did hair, I did makeup, and then I ventured into being a barber. And that was fun and great and everything. But as a single mom with no other provider, I loved it, but I needed more. I needed to make more. And I knew that I was meant for more, and there's no one in my family that's involved in real estate at all. So it was something that I stumbled upon through my high-end hair clientele.
Yeah.
And they were, doctors and lawyers and real estate investors, and they all kind of told me the same thing, like putting that seed in me, like, you should check out like real estate. I'm like, I don't even own a laptop. How am I going to do that? Like, it was so random.
Sure.
So I just decided one day to get my license and just see where it goes. And I just continued. I got my license, and then I assisted for a top producer. And then I learned from there, and I realized I'm actually really good at this.
Wow, I love this.
Yeah, and I think it really comes down, real estate just is basically relationships. I was always very good with people. I always had that passion for people and helping people and transforming lives, really.
Sure.
And now, of course, I'm doing it on a much higher level, but I just didn't know, even while I was doing hair, I became a therapist too. Wow. Hearing all their stories and helping them, guiding them. And it just, through hair, I realized, whoa, I have a passion in this. And then that's what led to real estate. Yeah.
And then you got on with a huge group, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. Who you're practicing your agency with.
Yeah. So I started at one brokerage before I joined the Oppenheim Group. So that brokerage was great. It was more of where I obviously, learned, and I had mentorship and, I was doing really well. I was the only woman in the office for a very long time. It was in San Clemente, California, so the very southern of Orange County. And I loved it. But I noticed that I was in a smaller fishbowl, and I realized that I was growing and I wanted to get into the luxury world. And they basically said, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't go into the luxury world. They were trying to tell me that people on that, first, it's way too competitive.
Yeah.
Basically saying there's no room for me. The other thing was the people are different. And I'm just like, I don't know what that means, but I still want it.
Yeah.
And so I just knew that I was growing in as too small of a fishbowl. And so stumbled upon the Oppenheim group, and I realized there's no ceiling.
Yeah.
And so, now I have my biggest listing, which is 28 million. So
Amazing.
I think I'm doing pretty good.
28 million. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, do you just do luxury real estate, or do you also help people like of all different, like pricing for the homes and range? Like what kind of a range?
No. And I think that is a common misconception with a lot of people, especially, of course the show, but we'll get into that. But because it is a luxury brokerage, no. A few months ago, I just closed on a $600,000 condo in Laguna Hills.
Awesome.
So it's just like the paychecks are great. When you're in the $20 million properties, it's great, but it's for me personally, everyone's different. The fulfillment comes from helping families, and the majority of families can only afford $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. And that's really the bread and butter. Right. The luxury is great and it's fun, but it's not as fulfilling as So I do both.
I love that, and it goes back to your heart, which is to help people, and so helping families, like you said, of all different price ranges. I think that's really good. So let's talk about the exciting part of you going from you step into real estate and then you get this incredible opportunity to be on a hit reality show, Selling the OC. And tell us about that. How did that happen?
Yeah, long story short, they found me on Instagram. And I thought it was spam. So I was like, okay, whatever. I didn't take it serious. And then they eventually found my email. And the bottom of the email had their signature. And it was Done and Done Productions. And I Googled it, of course. And I was like, this is real.
Yeah. Wow.
This is real. What? And I was so confused because, I heard of Selling Sunset, but I've never watched it.
Yeah.
So initially, when they asked me, I asked them, do I need to leave my brokerage to join the show? They said yes. And I'm like, I'm not interested because I'm so loyal.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm not going to leave them.
Yeah.
But then as time went on, because this was during COVID time, so everything was super delayed and stretched out.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this, but I had time to think about it. And as time went by, things started happening at my brokerage that I knew it was time for me to move on. And so I was like, you know what? Let me entertain this. Let me see what happens. So I did, and it was a long process. And long story short, I found out later that there was tens of thousands of agents that interviewed, and they only chose 9, and I was one of them.
Yay! I love it.
Crazy.
It's meant to be. It's meant to be.
It was crazy.
So now you get on the show, and it's pretty crazy. And people who have seen it know, it was had a little bit of drama.
A little bit.
Yeah. What was it like what is it like? Because you're still filming and you're still on the show as a main character. What is it like? What are the highs? What are the lows?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Highs, I would say, first of all, it's a once in a lifetime experience. It was so new and it was so fun. And regardless of the drama and everything else going on, at the end of the day, it is so fun because it's such a different experience. Yeah. And you learn things about yourself and about the industry. And it's just it's fun. And then I also have so much fun with my outfits and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them I'm like, oh, yeah, I killed it. Some of them I'm like, I did not think that through. but it was fun. And I stepped into The lows is, as a grown woman, I have never been surrounded by an environment that is so dramatic and kind of toxic in a way.
Yeah.
So it was me going in with my natural state of like, we're all going to be friends and we're all going to get along and I love you. And I was so like open and ready for this new experience, and come to find out a lot of the cast members are not like that, or not like me. They're not real. They're not authentic like myself. So it was like me trying to learn to navigate and being, in a sense, kind of forced to be around certain personalities that I would never put myself in or around in real life.
Right.
So it was learning to navigate through that. But honestly, even though that was just like a low, I learned from that and I grew from that.
Sure.
And learning to not take things personal. Season one, right. It was tough. I mean, I've never had a group of girls bully me like that ever. Not even like in school. Like that kind of says a lot about them. But anyways, but I think learning to not take things personal and just staying true to myself and just really just not caring. You know, I think season one, I think all of us in a sense cared so much because we were so, I think a lot of us kind of had a wall going into it because it was scary for a lot of us.
Right.
And it was new. I think even season 2 and season 3, I could tell that we're more like comfortable in who we are and our characters on the show.
Yeah.
And really stepping into that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, on the show, you guys are all selling real estate, and you're really shining and, you know, ringing the bell and selling houses. And like you said, you've got this big house right now, 28 million. But what would you say, like, why would people want to, you know, hire you as an agent as opposed to all the rest of them on the show?
Whew, okay. So that's a great question. I think my hard work really goes a long way. My authenticity and my true, genuine want to serve other people and make them happy. A lot of people on the show, I will be honest, a lot of them were given their business. A lot of them were given their business, and I was never given anything. And I think that really sets me apart from them because not all of them, but most of them. I think that sets me apart because there's just something about someone that is not given anything ever, but they will bend over backwards and more to make sure that you're happy and the transaction is done correctly and gets across the finish line.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes right into, you said, you know, you weren't given these properties, and it also goes into the next question that I have for you in the sense of you weren't really given much in life either, and you had to do things on your own, even being a single mom at a very young age. Now, I know the story, but would you mind kind of diving into that right now and just tell us a little bit about what happened, what was your childhood like, and that experience that you had getting, you know, being a young mom?
Yeah. So my childhood, that's a book and a movie, but I'll give you kind of cliff notes. It was tough. It was really hard. I had 2 different households with my dad and my stepmom, and then my mom, that me and my sister would go back and forth. And it was the Christian household, but I'm just going to say like kind of the hypocritical Christians where they tell you we go to church every Sunday. They talk about God and not being judgmental and all the things. But when we're home, that's all that was happening. I was just being judged and punished for even speaking. And it was just, that was tough. And then I had my mom, and she was basically the Antichrist. Like, she didn't believe in God, but she believed, because her question was, well, if there's a God, then why does all these bad things happen to good people? And that was her way of looking at life. And it was a very dark household. She did drugs. She was into alcohol. I've witnessed things that I should have never witnessed. As a little girl, I had my first cigarette, my first drink when I was 5. It was very dark. And so going back and forth between these two different households at a very young age, I learned how to lie. I've learned how to cope and suppress my feelings. And I couldn't speak to either or, because no matter what I say or do, I will get in trouble. And I kept everything inside. And then I was going through this with my sister. My sister, that's a different story that I won't share. But I was also in a sense kind of protecting her. And she was the older one.
Wow.
So I've always had something stronger in me. I've always had a voice in me. And that pissed off my mom. So she would say things to me that you should never say to your daughter. And it was just a tug of war my entire childhood life.
Wow.
It was tough. Then I started kind of seeing the light in high school. My mom kind of started going away.
Yeah.
At 10 years old, I actually yelled. I got in a fight with my mom, and I said I want to live with my dad. So me and my sister split. My sister was living with my mom, and then I was living with my dad. So more peace started coming into my life when that happened. But in high school, that's when freedom started rolling in, and I started kind of smelling the flowers. I'm like dancing at school and really coming into my own. And then at the age of 17, I got pregnant. And my parents did not accept that. And being Christians, they didn't want an abortion. So they said to find an adoption family and stay home, or keep your baby and leave. And as a 17-year-old sheltered girl growing up the way that she has, where am I going to go, first of all? Second of all, how am I going to do this being a single mom?
You're still a child, too.
I'm still a child, having a child, right? So I did find an adoption family. It was someone at my high school. And 7 months pregnant, something very empowering came over. I didn't know what it was at the time, but now that I'm older and wiser, it was the power of God, the love of God. Basically saying, you're going to keep him. We'll figure this out. So I just came to my parents and I said, I'm keeping my son.
Wow.
And I don't remember much after that, because I feel like more trauma started rolling in. But all I remember is they just say, okay. And they put me in the car and they take me to a shelter and they basically sign me off.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So traumatic.
Yeah. So, and then I think a lot of people hear my story, but they don't know really what happened with the father. So I go to the shelter, but when you're a minor living in a shelter and your parents sign you off, they still have legal rights over you. So they didn't allow me to visit anybody or have anyone visit me except for them and my sister. Of course, they're not going to come and visit me, right? So my sister just turned 18. She too was sheltered her whole life, right? We kind of had a similar upbringing. So she was out just living her life. And I had to call her and convince her, hey, please get me from the shelter. I need to go to my son's father's house and tell him what happened. I literally disappeared. None of my friends, it was the summer going into my senior year. I didn't have a phone. No one knew what happened to me. I just disappeared. And so I show up to his house, I think weeks later. I can't remember the time frame. So I show up to his house. He opens the door. And I'm like, my parents kicked me out of the house. I'm living in a shelter. And for me, how I look at it is I just lost my entire family. And I don't have anyone else. So I looked at him and said, let's get married. Let's do this family thing.
Yeah.
I'm 17.
Wow.
And I was like basically screaming, help.
Sure.
And he looked at me and he started crying, which I thought was like happy tears. Turns out he looks at me and he says, I'm getting married and she's pregnant. And from that moment, I don't even remember how I got back to the shelter. Like I'm
wow.
That's like
Another
I hit
loss.
it just the trauma it was bad. It was really bad.
Yeah. And that's like rejection, everything.
Abandonment was the
abandonment.
biggest thing for me. It's like no one loves me. I'm not worthy. And I didn't have anything except for my son. But I also started, the mental illnesses were happening since a younger age, but everything just started like
compounding.
Yeah. And then eating disorders. And then I couldn't eat. And the doctor said, you will lose your child if you don't eat.
Whoa.
And I forced myself to eat because, of course, I didn't want it, And I just remember being on automatic. And I was just existing. And my soul was gone.
Wow.
And then on my 18th birthday, 4 days after I turned 18, I had my son. And the rule was you go back home for a couple of weeks after you have your baby, and then you go back to the shelter. So I did that. I don't even remember staying with my parents. I think I shut the whole world out.
Sure.
And then because I was no longer a minor, I then was transferred to another shelter in Orange. And I was 18. And all the women there were in their 30s and 40s. So they treated me like their little daughter or their little sister.
Right.
And they showed a lot of love, but I was still just trying to get through it. Yeah.
So you bounced around from these shelters with a baby.
Yeah.
And wow.
And then, it doesn't stop there.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we can get deep into it later, but, and then, shelters don't last forever.
Right.
And then I was homeless because, long story short, I moved in with some people that I shouldn't have.
Okay.
And it became abusive. Drug use,
Wow.
physically abusive. And then that's when I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And I let that go. And I was literally sleeping in my car in the streets of Santa Ana with Jordan in the back seat and just falling. And I was too prideful to call my parents because the last thing I wanted to hear was, I told you so. And I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure this out. I made a choice. I have to figure this out. And so, I called my tia Concha, which doesn't know a word of English. And I just basically told her, like, let me stay with you give me some time to find a place, move all my stuff to her house. Next morning I wake up, my stuff is gone. My own family's friends, like, literally robbed me. So everything I ever owned was gone. It was bad. And then from there, I just started renting rooms from Craigslist. And I'm not even going to get into my experiences with that because it was very dark.
I can imagine.
But when you're someone that is young and looks like me and is single mom, I've dealt with sexual harassment, being robbed several times. And it was just really hard.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Kayla, I'm sorry that you, first of all, had to go through all this. That's really difficult and a lot for one person to be able to handle emotionally. How did you get through all this? I mean, your strength to keep going and look at you now. And for people who maybe are watching and are going through some of these very similar situations, struggling financially or, whether they're young or single moms or, being abused in the relationship, anything, like some of the things you went through. I mean, what got you through and how are you getting through now?
Oh my goodness. Well, it was a process.
Yeah. Sure.
I think it still is. I think all of us, will never be obviously perfect. We'll always, everyone needs to accept that life is a journey and you have to learn to fall in love with that journey of learning and peeling back layer after layer after layer because it never ends and it never will.
Right.
But that's okay. Well, first off, the first and foremost thing that I needed to do was heal. And when you are in a situation like myself, where you only have yourself and a child that you're trying to raise, you have to go through the healing process.
Yeah.
What does that look like? I didn't really start healing until I stumbled upon spirituality. That's when I opened this Pandora box of a whole new world I never knew about. I didn't understand what that meant. So I was like, what is this? And it got me to a point where I hit rock bottom. And I think sometimes people have to hit that rock bottom where you become so like desperate, where you're finding like something needs to change.
Yeah.
And when I realized that that thing that needed to change was within me the whole time, that's when my life turned around. I had to isolate myself. And that was in itself was so difficult because I was so desperate for just to be loved and find love and have love and just someone just accept me, please just accept me.
Sure.
When you're coming from that place, your whole life being isolated is the scariest thing in the whole world. And I had to be isolated and I had to look within. And I know that sounds like, oh, foo-foo. It's so true because everything that I was searching for, the happiness, the joy, the love, the acceptance, everything was all in myself the entire time. And that in itself is like for anyone to wake up and understand that self-awareness is like, unfortunately, that doesn't happen to everybody.
Right.
So when that hits you, it's time to go to work.
Wow.
And that's when I started isolating myself, reading books. And here's a crazy part. It wasn't until later in my life then I got therapy.
Yeah.
But for anyone listening to this, get therapy. That it took me too long to get into therapy because my whole life, my parents basically said, like, you need therapy, like you need help. There's something wrong with you. And so I looked at therapy as I'm accepting the fact that I'm crazy and I'm such a flaw, like I'm so messed up in the head, I'm never going to go to that. But even the best people in the world go to therapy.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Absolutely.
and then surrounding yourself with the right people. I was surrounded by the wrong people for too long. And that's super important, having that support system.
Sure.
And God.
And something happened to you, like you had kind of a moment, right? Like an encounter.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? I know it has to do with your faith and with God. What happened?
The one that I told you recently?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so powerful. So when you think you've like done a lot of work, there's always more.
Yes,
There's always more to do.
Exactly.
And I think it was God shaking me and said, you're ready for what I have next for you. And so he spoke to me one night and I just closed my eyes and I was just sitting in my bed and I was just sitting there in silence. And he basically showed me my future and it was so beautiful. And I saw my husband, I saw my house, I saw so many beautiful things. And then I started crying because he was showing me what I can have. But then he was showing me that I'm not going to get this if I continued to live the way that I was living. And the way that I was living was without him.
Wow.
So that the very next day, I literally went on the beach because that's where I really ground myself. And I was like, I'm committed. I am committed. And since then, 7/7/23.
Wow.
He has been opening so many doors for me. And I want to cry thinking about it because it's like,
I love this. It's powerful.
he's amazing. And it's like, he's so forgiving. And this whole time, he's been protecting my son and I, even when I didn't know it, understand it, or believe in him. And the crazy part is that he's always had a relationship with my son. I would put him in Christian school because I knew there was an importance with that.
Wow.
Because if my son doesn't have a father, at least he needs a heavenly father. So I knew like and he would go to church every weekend. I didn't. I would stay home. I would mostly sleep because I would be working so much.
Yeah.
And my son was non-judgmental. And my son's godmother that came into our lives was non-judgmental. And she would basically say, you'll come when you're ready. You'll be ready. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then it wasn't until really recently I realized, oh, I'm ready.
It's It's amazing what happens, I think, when you surrender, and so many people, I feel like, struggle with letting go of, some of the things that, like, we all hold on and we wrestle, with that. Everybody's got something, right? Could be food, could be alcohol, could be sex, drugs, whatever it is. And we hold on so bad, and it's like, but it's until we really let go and completely surrender and just almost like cry uncle, then God can come in and take over and has all of us. And then it's like you're struggling, but then once you give in to it, he comes and he just, like you said, he embraces you. There's no judgment. He's a father. It's like, finally, my daughter, my son has come home. It says in the Bible, it talks about that prodigal that came home, and he puts a robe around you and a ring on your finger and a crown. And then look what happens. I mean, in your own life, it's like you got aligned back with your Father in heaven, and then all of these doors start opening for you, right, in your life. And now you're sharing, you're helping more people, you're using your story to empower women and just people all over. And I think it's just absolutely amazing what God has done in and through your life, and how you're at a place now to give back. Let's talk about some of the things that, I think you went through all this pain, but now you're at a place where you found your purpose, and through the pain, you really want to give back. You want to be a light in the world, in your community. What are you doing? What are some of the things that you're doing right now and wanting to do to give back and to help?
We're going to hold that thought really quick, because there's something I want to add to the last thing you said, because I think this is really important for people to hear. When I recently recommitted to God, it wasn't because I hit rock bottom. And I think that's really important for people to hear, because yes, people surrender to him when they hit rock bottom. That wasn't the case for me. It wasn't until things were great for me. But I felt like I was stuck. And I'm just like, I'm doing a lot of the things that I know I should be doing. I'm in a really good place, best financially, emotionally, mentally, even physically. But I can't seem to get over this plateau, And then that's when he spoke to me, and he basically pushed me off the cliff. Like, you're ready, let's go. So I think that's so important. That is important, because it could be in any place in your life that you could accept him and surrender to him. It doesn't have to be when you are rock bottom at your worst. It could be when things are going so great, but you just can't seem to figure out why it's not like there's more, but you just can't seem to figure it out. It's because your relationship
really
with God.
Good.
Yeah.
Really good point. I'm glad you made that.
Yeah.
So Kayla, now that you've experienced all of this, you've gone through the pain, you're finding your purpose, and you're wanting to give back, what are some of the projects you're working on now, and what are you wanting to do?
Oh my gosh, I have such a long list, but I'm doing a lot more, like speaking on stages, and then along with my coaching, and also gonna write a book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's in the works. Yep. And then a movie.
Love it.
Which is huge.
Love it.
And then opening up a women's shelter. Because coming from someone that used to live in shelters, I found that there was a lot of flaws. And the flaws were basically, you come in, you do your chores, you have a curfew, you follow the rules, and then, your time is up and you go into the real world. So what ends up happening is these girls or women are not being taught real life lessons and working through their mental issues. Yeah. So, mental illnesses. I don't want to say issues, because it's not an issue. It's just an illness that you have to work through. Sure. So teaching women how to manage money, get a mortgage on a home, like doing things that are actually going to allow you to make it in the real world. Because I've seen too many women come back in the shelters, and there's that flaw that is missing from the system that I'm going to come in and change.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main reasons that when you and I sat, at the beginning and we were talking about working together, that I said, I really want to get behind you and what you're doing because, like I said, you're more than a pretty face. And you have a great heart and you really want to make a difference. And especially when I heard about what you want to do, taking your story, writing about it, writing a book that can empower women, inspire women, you're coaching, you're trying to help people, but also, doing a movie and that's going to really be inspiring. But then opening a shelter, I think for women would be so incredible. And I know I would be honored to be a part of this journey with you. And I'm excited. I told you, just watch, and everybody listening is going to watch and follow you and follow your journey to see what happens and what doors God opens for you because, you're putting it out there now and you're stepping into it and knowing like who you are and your purpose. And I think that God's just going to open more and more doors. So it's exciting for people to follow along. How do people find you and how do they follow you?
Well, you can just Google me. Just kidding. I'm mostly on Instagram. I'm trying to get better at all the platforms.
Right.
Side note, you need to help me with that.
Exactly.
But MS Miss Kayla Cardona Kayla Cardona because some people can't get my last name right.
I love it.
On Instagram, I think Twitter and Facebook, but I don't really go on those platforms.
Yeah, but mostly Instagram.
Yeah.
And you're sharing a lot more in your stories and bringing people into this and your journey. So my last question, which I know is the most people are going to be the most interested to know, because as your manager, I get asked this all the time and on Instagram and social media, and it's just we're just kind of throwing it in as an extra. Is are you seeing anyone right now? Are you single? Are you in a relationship?
That seems to be the question.
I know.
A lot of people ask me that all the time.
Tell us.
Yeah. Well, I am single. I am single. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Are you wanting to be single? Are you wanting to be in a relationship? What are you looking for?
No, I've never wanted to be single. I think it's really important for people to also understand this. You've heard just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to my story. There's so much more. That's why we got to write this book and movie.
Yes.
I had to do a lot of healing, and that took a very long time. I never wanted to be a single mom, and I think a lot of women out there say single mom and wear it like it's a badge of honor. I don't agree with that. I never wanted to be single, but I think I'm definitely in a place where I've done the healing, I've done the work, I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm ready. I am ready to, find my husband. I'm just gonna say it.
Yes,
just find my husband.
I love it. Put it out there. I love it.
Yeah.
And what are some qualities that you're looking for in a husband?
Okay.
Tell
Let's
us.
see. Let me take out this laundry list. Just kidding.
Sure you have a list, right? Do you have a list?
Well, I mean, the most important thing really is his spirituality and his relationship with God. I think that comes number one.
Yeah.
That's so important. And I think maybe we can go into this later or further today.
Sure.
Why not? But it's really important for people to understand masculine and feminine energy. And me growing up the way that I have my entire life, I was living in my masculine energy, the survival mode, the protector, the coping, like being strong and suppressing I was just in my masculine energy. And it wasn't really until recently I realized, whoa, wait a minute. Because even though I haven't really been in fully committed relationships, I would date. But the men I was dating, I realized were in their feminine energy. But it's because I've been in my masculine for so long, the single mom, the provider, the hustle.
Right.
I didn't realize that that's what was happening. And so I was attracting all the wrong men for so long. And it finally, I'm in a place where I can still get stuff done in my feminine too.
Mm.
And I think this is important for a lot of women out there, single moms, CEOs,
Right.
owners, like boss babes. I hate that term, but you know what I mean.
Right.
They have this great, successful career and they're doing well in life, but their love life is off and they can't seem to find that man, you know? And that's also what I teach in my coaching. The difference between masculine and feminine energy, and then what it comes down to what you want. Sorry, I think this went into like a little bit of my coaching.
That's good.
But to answer your question, I'm looking for an alpha masculine man.
Strong man.
That will allow me to continue to go on the path that I'm going, which is serving and helping the world, basically.
Yeah.
I like to call myself the mom of the world.
Yeah.
The mom to my son and to the world.
I love it.
Allowing me to still continue to do that, but also can come to me and say, you know, like, I got this. You don't have to work, but like I'm working because I want to. I want to be in my feminine and be able to give and care and nurture the world.
Yeah.
And for him to be that man for me.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so on a side note, as a manager, I am now accepting applications. So if you are interested and you fit that bill, gentlemen, you can email info@kandcomedia.com.
Oh my God, I just got really hot in here.
Matchmaker/manager. Okay, we're going to. I love it.
You're so funny. Oh my goodness.
It. Oh, well, somebody is going to be very, very blessed to have you as their queen. And this was such a pleasure to talk to you today and have people get to know you, and for me even to dive deeper into your story. You've been through so much. You are a very strong, powerful woman, and I can't wait for you to grace these stages and tell your story, write this book, get the movie out. I'm going to help you with all of this, and just for the world to get to know more of you. You are an authentic woman and beautiful, and I love your heart to want to help people. So anybody, if you're listening and you want to have coaching, definitely follow Kayla, and you can email to book her also at info@kandcomedia.com. And she's going to be speaking at a lot of amazing stages and telling the story, and she has a really good message for you guys too, so stay tuned. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
You guys make sure to follow all of the episodes here at Speak Life. Have a great day.
Other days it just ain't working. The good, the bad, the right, the wrong, and everything in between.